I'm Dorf Chronicler, here to chronicle the tales of this Dwarven realm. Hello! I've been exploring these caverns for some time and I thought, you know what? Why not set up a little rest area? I'm glad you've made it, because now I can share with you the stories of the Skinny Knives, Dwarven civilization. The Skinny Knives are the only Dwarven civilization in the world, the Pass of Plunge, which is now in its 188th year. The mountain home capital, Crested Relic, was founded in the first recorded year, in the mountainous region known as the Horns of Labor. Their first monarch was Tulon Doralol, who ruled into the year 51, when she was struck down by the forgotten beast Golgan Night Sully, the Drool of Manges, a huge feathered snail with wings that undulated rhythmically. Beware its noxious secretions. That same year, though, Golgan Night Sully would die to a cave crocodile. The next monarch of the Skinny Knives was Tulon's son, Erdem Paperankle, who reigned from the year 52 to 67, when he was struck down by a cave dragon as part of the war called the War of Clashes, fought between the Skinny Knives and the Goblin civilization, known as the Rare Plague. The Rare Plague was founded in the Murk of Realms, the swampy western coast on the continent. A towering, hairy gecko devil named Vim Floodredge, the Untrustworthy, thrust a spire named the Muddled Towers up from the underworld and founded the goblin capital, Glumnus Scorpion. This gecko devil would die in one of the many goblin raids at the site Pine Roughness, leading the Rare Plague to be ruled by a series of goblin monarchs. The War of Clashes raged on, and the dwarves of the Skinny Knives were next led by the Queen Onal Orbsfocused, daughter of Erdem, starting in the year 68. Unfortunately, she confusingly involved the Skinny Knives in a conflict between a different goblin faction, the Unseen Immortality, of the Fatal Hills, which was founded by a different gecko devil, Undisputed the Unthinkable Thrall, who still reigns as master of the Unseen Immortality to this day, from his devilish towers at the Fat Bastion and Leaked Devil. The other part of this unrelated conflict was the Elven civilization, the Cat of Families, whose capital Gladepax, in the intense jungles, was conquered by the human necromancer, Kobe Blameless Glitter, and his twisted, undead minions, though since his death in 156, the Elves have been resettling this forest retreat. After the death of Queen Onal, the Skinny Knives recognized a new dynasty, led by the new queen Ava's Reigned Lanced, starting in the year 80. Ava's was the granddaughter of a dwarven necromancer named Momuz Paddledchucks, who was the father of King Erdem Paperankle, giving Ava's a very loose claim to the throne. The Elves, though, once again involved the dwarves of the Skinny Knives in their wars with the goblins. This conflict was called the War of Rampaging, and Queen Onal died at the capital of the Elven civilization, the Mechanical Wonder, which was dubbed Waxquick, and founded in the Forest of Trances. The queen was slain during a duel against the human Stasbub Boardbad, who in turn was struck down by a giant panda during the very same battle. The belligerent goblins in this conflict were of the civilization the Routed Witch, who hailed from the far northeast region of the Dune of Tangles. These goblins first followed Obruk the Intense, a snow monster in the humanoid shape of a badger, from the underworld, who founded Bandmalind from his spire of the Towers of Ruling, though not for long did they follow him, for he was slain in the year 27, being struck down by an elf. Since then, the Routed Witch has been mastered by various goblins, though now their master is the human poet Stozu Werebent, who has created such works as Witches Ever Onward, The Sun Sets on Confidence, and Beguiler and the Greatnesses. He also currently wields a legendary iron battle axe, Archcolts, the Whimsical Tragedy. After the death of Queen of Uz, next reigned her daughter, Einod Copperflicked, who became the longest reigning monarch of the Skinny Knives, reigning for 59 years and being struck down in year 183. The queen died during yet another assault on Pine Roughness by the Rare Plague, being killed by the goblin Snowdub Elder Witches, though her death was avenged by a dog during the same battle. Funny enough, the current mayor of Pine Roughness is a dwarf named Kulet Polioner. In 167, when he was only a year old, He was abducted by goblins from the unseen immortality, yet somehow found his way to resettling in Waxquick, the elven capital. 3 years later, though, in 170, the goblins again kidnapped Kulit, transferring him to Leek's Devil, where he grew up a member of the unseen immortality. While growing up captive, Kulit found love in the arms of a fellow captured dwarf, Stasok Ghoul combined, officially becoming lovers in 184, though they did break up a year later. As Kulit began the year 186, a newly single dwarf, his father, Tossed Pleated Dome, died. His father, who was the mayor of Pine Roughness that organized defenses against the many sieges by the goblins. Despite being a member of the enemy civilization, Kulit inherited the title of mayor, so for the past few years, Pine Roughness, the hotly contested site in the fiery prairies, has been governed by a kidnapped dwarf with unclear loyalties. Which also brings us back to the modern day, in the year 188. Einod Copperflick died in 183 without an heir, so the throne passed to 28-year-old Dobar Channelwashed, the now Queen of the Skinny Knives. Back during the reign of Erdem Paperankle, the king's daughter Onal became the heir. Yet, she had a younger brother named Mesthos Abbey Evend, and a daughter named Lytast Inky Kingdom. Mesthos would marry Stakkud Lancemute, and together they had a daughter named Bomrek Prime Trumpets. Lytast would marry Dumed Slickrings, together having a son named Unal Loved Minds. These two cousins would then marry and birth a son named Dodok Treaty Call, who himself married the unrelated Usteth Shockpaints, a monster slayer who died to an enormous, one-eyed theropod plains titan named Anriz Whiskerpelts the Leafy. Funny detail here, Anriz Whiskerpelts would also be killed by a giant panda, which seems to be a more common than one might expect occurrence in this world, the Pass of Plunge. So, Dodok and Usteth had a daughter, Iden Handleseed, who grew to become a priest in the human civilization religious order, the Cult of Esteem, worshipping the dwarven deity Id the Umber and the human deity Vost. In time, Iden would marry Atesh Aquatowers, and they so far have had a daughter named Toba Drillhammers together, who for some reason was passed over in succession to her 1 year younger sister, the now Queen Dobar Channelwashed. Speaking of deities, the worshipped gods of the Skinny Knives are a bit of a mixed bunch. The dwarves of Skinny Knives worship Zuthan, dwarven goddess of wealth, Uno Maze Shadow, dwarven goddess of death and trickery, Id the Umber, dwarven goddess of caverns and mountains, the Scorching, dwarven goddess of forts, war, and valor, Kadal Cobalt Earths, the Brown Canyons, dwarven goddess of jewels, Esper, human god of night and darkness, introduced through the northern human kingdom of Tongs, Vost, human goddess of victory and war from the Satiny nation, and Tura Teacher Crawl, the fragile king, human goddess of wisdom and thraldom, taught by the Watchful Nations, a human civilization that straddles either side of the Veiled Gulf as it separates the continent nearly in half. So, Dobar has brought the dynasty back to the direct descendants of King Erdem Paperankle through a lesser line. Dobar is the great-great-great-granddaughter of Erdem Paperankle. In 186, she married Bimble Rose Platters, so let's pray to the gods their union bears many offspring to further the dynasty. Dobar Channelwashed reigns from the mountain home of Crested Relic, ruled by the site government, the Godly Palace. While open war has abated, there's still much open hostility and high tensions between the dwarves of the Skinny Knives and the goblins to the southwest, the Rare Plague, and the goblins to the northeast, the Routed Witch. She must reign with wisdom, caution, and daring, lest the Skinny Knives go the way of the other dwarven civilization, the Furnace of Rapidity. The Furnace of Rapidity is a name all but lost to legends, for they were a young dwarven civilization on the eastern side of the continent, founded in the mountains now called the Permanent Tower. They had but one settlement, Inky Chain, which saw much conflict in its brief life, starting with a war with the Elves of the Lion of Scribing. It was during this war, in the year 8, that the civilization would fall, though not by elf hands, at least not by elf hands alone. In its brief existence, the Furnace of Rapidity fought not just elves, but also forgotten beasts, twilight monsters, and even the dragon Kovest, who lives to this day, and as recent as 187 is still terrorizing all the realms of the Pass of Plunge, such as devouring a cow belonging to the frilly group of Smile-Nourished, part of a human civilization, the Satiny Nation. But getting back to the Furnace of Rapidity, the dwarves at their capital, Inky Chain, were struggling against many horrible creatures, and soon opened war with the elves of the Lions of Scribing. Already weakened by such conflicts, their king, Fath Cloudysmiths, would see his civilization end, and his fortress, Inky Chain, come to ruin, when the enormous, one-eyed theropod Plains Titan Anriz Whiskerpelts the Leafy arrived, and slaughtered every remaining living creature at Inky Chain. So marked the end of the Furnace of Rapidity, making the Skinny Knives the last Dwarven civilization in the Pass of Plunge. Inky Chain would remain a waste for a decade and a half, until the giant Posa action flies moved into the ruins, where she remains to this day. In 92, she would venture as far north as the human hamlet Soundgrowl, where she stole a muskmelon vine. So this is the world of the Pass of Plunge. Dobar Channelwashed, Queen of the Skinny Knives, will either rise to the challenge, overcome the struggles of this world, and usher in a new era, a Dwarven age, or she will fail, and before she falls, she will live to see the Skinny Knives wiped out by goblins, or elves, or ettins or dragons, or by losing everything to forgotten beasts, or worse. But Queen Dobar is not worried. Even now, she is planning on a new dwarven settlement, one where a select few dwarves shall embark on faraway shores and lands far from Crested Relic. Thanks for listening to these tales, and if you want to follow the chronicles of this world as these dwarves strive for greatness, please subscribe to the channel and like this video as it helps me grow and reach new viewers. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time when we go over more Dorf Chronicles.